know this is the last panel of the day, but we are still full of energy and ready to go party tonight. And so let's talk about scaling versus failing and doing it the smart way, not the hard way. I think as entrepreneurs, we have all seen many, many different stories. As investors, we've all seen many, many companies either make it or fail. But we want to talk about the how and the why some of them perform better than others. So I want to introduce, we have three amazing panelists who not only are they professionally amazing, they're all people I really like quite a lot. So
I like you quite a lot too.
Yeah.
so we're going to have a lot of fun. All right, so Jackson Klein, CEO of Kio, and Kio is a biometric tech, which I can't wait for everyone to hear more about. And then we have Pael Farasat, who is the Chief Growth Advisor of Finca, which helps investing in small businesses in Africa, which we know is the future of where our population is going. So we also have John Stanton, who is the founder of Universal Export Ventures. He is also an investor. So, and I'll quickly tell you who I am. Aside from being the moderator, I am Nicole Ensline, and I'm the CEO and founder of Sublime Communications. So what I do on a daily basis is help build brands, scale brands, companies, and even personal brands. So I have seen this from so many different lenses, so it's exciting to be able to share this with everybody. So I would love to talk about, just from each of your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face? And I know that is a broad question, but I'd love for you...
Do we start at the beginning?
Go for it, because we all know how easy it is to find money, start a company, run it, exit, right? It's just a walk in the park. So let's talk about, what some of those key challenges are, milestone moments.
Actually, I want to pass this over to Jackson because he's at this very incredible stage in his company, and I know a little bit about it. So I'm going to say, vulnerably share some of the massive struggles that you guys have overcome. Let's take a look at that.
Okay. So where my mind immediately went was a challenge that we don't have. But I still think it is a valuable answer. A thing that a lot of startups deal with is just getting really high quality people who are willing to grind. And I know there was talk about work-life balance before, and that's very important, but the reality is a lot of times you need a core group of people who are wildly dedicated to a vision and willing to work exceptionally hard, and those people are hard to find. And they're hard to kind of get into that almost founder mentality, tie themselves to the mast, and be willing to weather the storm. And so I have a lot of peer CEOs who struggle with that immensely, and I think that we haven't struggled with it as much, or maybe at all, because of a core thing, and I think John and hopefully we all speak about here, which is leading with vision, and kind of leading with like audacious vision, working on the biggest problems that we face as a civilization, as a planet. It turns out if you do that and you're proud of it, and you speak loudly about it, that all of the right people come to you and are willing to tie themselves to the mast alongside you.
That is so beautifully answered, and it sounds to me like, this vision and this power also stems from having strong leadership and a leader that you're willing to really ride or die with. And hats off to you, because
Ride or die.
Ride or die. Yeah, you have to build a culture. That is clear. And we'd love to hear about some of the secrets to building that culture, because that is really how you have to keep people there.
I can give a quick shout out. A huge shortcut to building great culture is to have a founding team that's majority women. In the U.S., majority immigrant, and ideally maybe everyone looks a little bit different. And so that was one of our approaches, and it turns out the diversity and honestly, I think just kind of female energy is massively helpful to setting culture in a company.
Wow, I
Yeah.
like that.
Let's have a round of applause.
To the women,
Like, come on,
to
everybody.
the ladies.
And jumping in, I think one of the things that's really important, and this is to your two questions kind of at the same time, some of the nightmares that I faced both as an entrepreneur, well, three phases, right? Entrepreneur, CEO, and investor, is when a company tries to scale just for financial returns. And it's something about, hey, we're going to get this return on our money, this return on our time. It begs to sunk cost, or it speaks to sunk cost. And sometimes you don't actually want to scale. And the only thing that I think that actually drives scale, speaking to both of these really remarkable human beings, is that, yeah, no one needs that. What's that? Purpose drives scale. And then team will actually buy into that. And the team will buy in a positive direction, and the team will also call your bullshit in the negative direction when you say, we're changing the world, it's amazing, but everyone's just trying to have a financial return. So, yeah.
If I can add something from a purely personal perspective here. So I'm a beekeeper, and I study these bees and how they create this colony. And I've learned everything about scaling from the beehive. And I'll tell you why. Like, anyone here is a beekeeper or knows anything about bees or honey business? Okay, there's one right there. Okay. Molly, back me up here. So every hive needs a queen. And they will protect her at their own cost, like at their cost of their own life. But without her, the hive is dead. It's gone. Forget the honey. You don't even have a colony. And so in business, I feel like the queen is either going to be your purpose, right? Or it's going to be a vision that your people can follow. Like, they have to believe it. So if you don't believe in it, and you don't have purpose, and you're just doing it to make more money or get more scale or whatever the more is, it's not about the more. It's about what is it that you want more, and does the whole organism need that? And that's what I learned from the bees, is that there's an organism that is a collective. And what does that entire organism need? And if we can look at business that way, or like, for example, right now, I'm an advisor on a fund that's based in Africa for startups. It's an all-female team. So coming back to your point, all-female team, from the MD to the lawyer to the investment director to name it, the advisors. And we had to diversify. In the IC, we added some guys. I mean, it's a fun thing to do, but it's hard to do. It's not easy to do. So what was our purpose? Our purpose was so that I can go up to people like you and say we have an all-female team, and we're very proud of it. And it is very unique for an investment fund to have an all-women team, even today. And so what is your purpose, and what does the organism need? And that, to me, is conscious leadership, when you can be conscious of that. And I spent 20 years being an unconscious follower, so I'm speaking from doing both. I've done both. If my bosses said go left, I went left, unconsciously. But now I'm like, if to become a conscious leader in a conscious business, and just coming back to your point, like, purpose and profitability have to go hand in hand, because at the end of the day, any businesses or anything that I work on, it has to be paired together, because impact is going to be your differentiator. There's so many businesses of the same type, but how are you going to be different? And so, I don't know. I think both of you are super cool because you both stole my points, and I'm repeating.
You're welcome.
But I back you guys. 100% of the bees back you. And that's how they work in nature. you can't brute force scale. It has to work well together. You have to find a way in infrastructure, some scaffolding to inspire scale. You can't brute force it, and that's usual.
You mean you can't financially engineer scale?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's the thing. You can financially engineer anything, but if no one believes you, you will fail as fast as you succeed because it's just the foundation's weaker. So, yeah.
I love that answer. And I love we've got some chemistry going on here. This is so great. I think it's so true because even when it comes to building a brand, you have to build a brand with authenticity. You can't sell someone something if it doesn't have a deeper meaning for them. And so often when I talk to founders, the most difficult thing most founders have a very big problem with being able to tell their story and coming up with an elevator pitch. It's just a very difficult thing because there are so many things your company may do. You may be a technology, you may be a biometric tech. It doesn't matter. In your head you have so many things, and it's distilling it to this one simple point, but that simple point it can't just be about you. It has to be about the person you're talking to. So, Payal, I have a question for you. How, as an impact company, how do you see the interaction and the intersection between scaling, growing, and being impact focused?
Storytelling.
I love you for that answer.
You got to tell stories about your data. And the storytelling, I mean data-driven storytelling. You can't just make up stories. You got to back them with facts, and you got to make the facts tell the story. And that's the hardest thing. I think so many leaders have visions and they have great products, but they see the data and they just repeat it as if just because it's factual, it's going to come through and it's going to be believable. And the truth is, I mean, you got to have people on your team that can tell stories. So you need to have a chief storyteller in every freaking organization, because if you do, no matter what the data says, they're able to tell a story that then can just permeate and just, I don't know. So stories would be the answer, and if done well, they're really powerful. And if they are done wrong, it can sink a brand, right? So absolutely. It goes both ways.
Thank you. Jackson, I have a specific question for you. I'm sure people have heard this week, we've talked to death about AI and tech, and I think it's a really interesting thing to think about how you can use tech for humanity and ethically and do no harm.
Yeah, there was a moment when that was Google's. It was what? Don't be evil. Look how that turned out. No, we love Google, but it's so hard to control. No, I guess what I mean there is that it went away naturally. That phrase had to kind of melt away because it was too kind of monolithic in its tone. And I think that naturally, as an organization scales, you have to adapt, and that's a really hard reality. And I think that I would. So not Google, but other companies, as there are probably entrepreneurs in the room or people who invest in entrepreneurs. And I think that one of the things I think about so much, and I advise young entrepreneurs and people getting started, is like really critically think about what, like in the best case scenario or with the most scale, what have you achieved and what is the impact you have had on the world? Because a lot of people start companies and they're kind of looking at the next month or the next year, but they don't actually realize that if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other and you do a good job, you might actually accidentally build this giant thing that might accidentally be net negative for humanity or the planet. So I would implore people to build good things. Like start with there. And if you do that, then you kind of end up in the right spot and hopefully you do scale. But a lot of companies, frankly, shouldn't scale. I do think that, in AI, there's so much net positive stuff, but a lot of people who are building in AI also probably are not really thinking about the second order and third order effects of what they're building. And they might just accidentally get into a position that hurts us all. So assume you aim big, assume you will win, and make sure that winning is good. I think that that's a proper approach.
I like that mindset. So, John, you come from an interesting point of view because you're also an investor. Do you feel that having the perspective of an investor is a helpful tool as an entrepreneur?
Actually, yeah. This question to me is near and dear to my heart because my very first company that I started straight out of university, I grew up poor, so I thought, fuck it, I'm going to start an investment firm so I can learn money. And that, went well. It was great. Started September 10th, 2001. So, you only go up. But a lot of it, I actually had to retrain myself, even though I was running my own office, right? My own company. It's a small company, lots of AUM and all the things, and then launched a nice little angel investment firm off the side, all the things. But as an entrepreneur, it goes back to things like what Jackson is talking about. You're actually really focused on things like unit economics, right? As you scale, you're saying, okay, we are scaling this company. We're making it big for a real good reason for humanity. And then I need my revenue per employee to go up, right? That's a different perspective than a, say, more passive investor. And so I think this touches on, what both of you guys have already talked about and what Jackson spoke about is the passion that the crew has and the leadership that's required for everyone to literally tie themselves to the mast is what I had to train myself moving away from an investor's mindset into an entrepreneur's mindset for all the businesses that I started as a founder and CEO. And so the combination is powerful. So anybody who is an investor, an only investor, I will challenge you and I will say, start a side gig, start a company, feel the burn and the fucking ego death that you have to go through to make things happen. And then invest again with that mindset.
Yes. I think rejection is something that startups know too well. Going through the fundraising process, I think you have to have a very thick skin. But I would love to hear about some of your aha moments and tipping points along the way, along the journey, and valuable advice that you can share with everyone here.
So I think one of the biggest aha moments for me was realizing that scale is not success. And you said this, I think, or you said this, that you said this. Some companies should not scale. And even if you scale, it doesn't mean you're successful. And that was, I think, the biggest thing, because I think we're all so like scale, grow. My mentor was Dr. Harry Markowitz. He's passed away, but he's a Nobel laureate economics. I'm economics background. So he had told me something before he passed. It was really cool because he was on my investment committee for, I managed 16 billion AUM investment firm, right? And he was on the investment committee, and he would say this all the time. He's like, when you leave the room, when you exit the room, what systems have you built that are sustainable? No matter what you do, think about, I'm leaving the room, and if you can't answer that question very quickly in 2 seconds, it doesn't matter how much scale you have, it's not sustainable either. And I felt like that was like an aha moment. And I think I use it in life now. It's like when I leave this room, is there a system here that's sustainable, that's going to do something good in alignment with my values? So for that, you need to know your values first, and then keep building this like system behind you, every door, every room. And so when we had our latest exit, it was literally that for that. It's like you can have a great, successful investor exit, but when you've exited, when you've left that room, what sustainable structure have you left behind? And so that's was like, I mean, he taught me that, and he's wise, and he passed away in his 90s, and I'm grateful, but it's been a life changer, not just business changer.
Yeah, very nice.
It is beautiful. And I think a theme that keeps coming up is really about culture. And I've worked with so many companies that we've taken from as few as 5 employees and taken them to thousands of employees. And there have been a handful of them that I've seen that have been able to really maintain the culture. And I'm always saddened when I see what was a thriving company, and even though it's financially growing, but it loses its soul. It just is lost. And what are those ways? How do you see as leaders and as you scale your companies, how do you maintain that compass? How do you stay the course?
Do you want to answer? Do we just all jump in?
Go for it. You can go down the line,
Down the
up
line?
the line.
Yeah. Well, I simply, conceptually, we change, right? So a company is an organism, and it also grows and changes. But if it doesn't have a North Star that we are talking about, purpose drives scale, right? If it's not behind what you're doing, then inherently your culture is going to turn to shit. It's just going to have a whole bunch of assassins come in, and it'll be a different raison d'etre, right? And so if you're really hardcore raison d'etre, even though the corporation, the company, or however structure you want to talk about, it will evolve and will change, right? Because a 50-person or even a 50 million revenue company versus a 500 million revenue company, the people that made that 50 million revenue company successful will likely not all be there in the 500 million version, right? Which means inherently it's going to shift. But that North Star is the key, right? And then honestly, you see even founders who started a company. Oftentimes, I tell founders who started a company and they're there and they're wanting to scale it, that they need to leave. They're not the right person to run that company anymore. And it's okay, right? It's okay for that to be the case because things change. But that North Star at the very beginning is the key.
Are we going down? I think when scale turns into chaos, I think things get toxic in any organization, and you got to watch for that. And I think that's like many leaders don't look for that because they think that's the price you pay to be successful, is you take on chaos and you deal with toxic people, toxic employees, toxic partners, toxic investors, right? Like, I mean, when we're investing in a company, if we're toxic and we want to bring that, they'll do it. And that's where it's painful because you don't want toxicity in your life. I mean, I was just in the Deepak Chopra thing, and you were there too. I mean, he blew our minds. He's like, look, this place is toxic because all you guys are focused on is networking. And there's truth to that because we're literally spinning up. We spin. And at the end of the day, when we leave our existence here, it's not about that spin. It has to be more than that. And so put your radar on for toxicity. And are you surrounding yourself with toxic people, or chaotic people or chaotic energy or chaotic investors or chaotic leaders who are constantly manifesting that. And is that really the point of building something and having it be successful? And can it really be successful if it's really toxic? I don't know. I'm just guessing no, but I don't know. Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah. Okay. I can keep mine brief, but I think I like the systems comment before, and I think systems and people are deeply intertwined here, right? So you want to leave behind great systems, but of course the people are ultimately, without people, the systems do nothing. And so you need these incredible people, which is a massive emphasis on hiring well. And there's been plenty written about that. We don't need to go into it, but like we have a core tenet in our company, which is simply don't hire assholes. It's a nice easy one, but even within that, and that's written down like explicitly in our hiring guidelines internal to the company. And I think that you don't need to, like, we never feel like we have to betray that. It turns out you can just always have that rule. And even above that, you can say, instead of don't hire bad people, hire amazing people. Hire people you truly want to work with. Be patient in the process. And no, you don't need, that 10x engineer and this and that. If they're toxic, don't do it. Just don't do it. Get the 9x engineer who's amazing. You're fine. You'll be okay. So I think that because you don't want it to all blow up in your face, and it will. If you lose the culture, it just doesn't matter. And we've seen this happen so many times now. Or if you're the founder, you'll ultimately lose the company. So like focus on that core team. I think that that's critically important. But I think the additional point that's counterintuitive is that most teams should be way smaller than they are. And I think that you can build, and there's a lot of breadth has been given to this at Davos already, but small teams can build global scale products that work in enterprise situations, they work in national security, they work in whatever. Do not just add people for the sake of adding people, because then where you started this of like that death of culture, I would argue that you get there no matter what. If you get too big, once you're over, a few thousand employees or whatever, it just doesn't really matter anymore. Now it's no one, you no longer know most of the people even. You no longer have direct lines to leadership. So if you want to work in an organization that's a close-knit group of people, what's a small group of I forgot the quote, but anyway, it's unreasonable people in small groups getting great things done, and but you need that group to stay small enough that you have efficient communication and all of that. So, and we saw it with Twitter. What was it, like 80% of the staff, and it was going to explode and die, and it didn't. Like these companies get big for big sake, and that actually ruins culture. So to keep culture, probably try to stay small and be very, very efficient.
Purposeful. I think it's amazing, and to me, it's really great hearing, especially in a panel that's about businesses failing, scaling, that we're spending a lot of time talking about humanity. And I think that there is a big link between humanity and creating something that's scalable. And it is putting that North Star in place that people want to follow. And people want to follow something because you've created an energy and a light that they see and they want to be a part of. So I certainly see a lot of lights up here, which I'm really thankful for. What I want to know is each of you, I would like you each to answer, because you have this opportunity, you have the stage or the floor, what is it you need most? And that doesn't have to be, it's not always an economics thing, but what is it you need most? Because to me, it's the power of connectivity. And I know Deepak may have, I agree, too much networking, but I think if your intention is known, and if everyone in this room knows your intention, there's likely someone who can forge a connection to the one thing you may need. And that, it could be anything.
Start off, Jackson.
Oh man, I'm working on it. Do you have an easy answer?
Um, I would say if you can figure out how to manifest things, whatever it is you want. I stumbled upon it a couple of years ago where I can say I want X to happen, and a month later it happens. But it's a thing that you earn with whatever, like yourself, right? Like this really sense you believe in yourself so much, and it's not you, it's like you believe in whatever purpose, that whatever you're working on has that purpose. You believe in that purpose so much that like the universe conspires to make sure it happens. And like it happened today in that other session. The lady sitting next to me was from Microsoft, and the lady sitting in front of me, there she is. And I swear, she just popped it. I swear, like,
It worked.
I'm just saying, see what I just did? I thought of her, and she's in a room, and she probably, yeah, anyways. So I would say what I need most is that, to keep that, because you can also lose it. Because if you get cocky and you get arrogant and you don't appreciate the gift, and you just take it for granted, it's gonna go away. I will not be able to make her appear in a room where I was just talking about her, because she was such a gift. She was sitting right next to me, and I needed someone at that moment to be supportive of me. We're very busy. We're here. There's so much going on. My energy is getting depleted. And I literally said, I need just someone to like bring charge my phone, my internal phone. And she sat next to me, and she was like this charger for me. And we've never met before. And here she is again. And so I would say what I need in my life to keep manifesting is to keep my energy up, to surround myself with people that are amazing and purpose-filled and value-aligned. And hopefully I don't lose the gift, and I can keep appreciating getting the gift. And if there's something I would share with others is like, get to that point where you can manifest whatever the heck it is that you want for yourself or others. Because that's kind of cool and it's different.
Go for it, John.
While Jackson collects his thoughts, I think something for me, just in general, from the perspective of, say, scale-up entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, the belief in oneself without the ego is vital. And so that's something that I call it from a perspective of even my own personal journey. I actively need people who are in my life who engage the exact same way, actively. And that means you have to be badass motherfuckers who come up, excuse me, can we edit that? My bad.
We're all adults. It's
We're all
okay.
adults here.
It's okay.
But I think the strength in that is huge, right? Being able to enter a room and then both give support and ask for support in a very open way. And so for me, that is vital. From a perspective of my business or businesses, I want to actively engage commercially with people who think that way and think huge. So even with Jackson and Keo, we're engaging with humans at a large commercial scale, at a sovereign scale, that implemented technology that is literally the foundation for human identity for the rest of humanity for the next 100 years, and that is a crazy fucking thing to do, right? And so there's the commercial side of that. And then there's the investment side of that. We want aligned investors. I want aligned investors in my investment company who think the same way, who are not toxic. And then we go after opportunities and support amazing entrepreneurs like Jackson, the team, to do amazing things and be a part of it. So there you go.
Bravo. Yeah. Okay, so I like that all of our what do you need are like, we need the world, or we need all of you to think this way, and none. It's like, I need this. Yeah, I need this. And I was trying to think of something that wouldn't be that again, but ultimately that's where I landed as well. So the we're living in a world right now that is dealing with the overhang of a lot of institutions that were built out of the world wars, that were built out of a lot of resource extraction, a lot of really harmful policies, and a lot of the people who kind of built those systems that helped us, ultimately get where we are, and we're very, I guess, thankful for a lot of that. But fundamentally, a lot of those people, just by nature of human lifespan, won't be here all that much longer. And for my generation and the generations under me, we're kind of left like standing around looking at the the ruins of what was basically a big national park and trying to figure out what's next. And I think that there's a huge amount of pessimism in millennials and Gen Z all the way down, and a huge amount of apathy, because it feels like the power structures are in place. They have been in place for a long time, and there really is no way to affect change. And I interview these people for our company. I hire them, and it is just truly and deeply sad how pervasive that lack of optimism and positivity and a real feeling that we can affect change is. And if this doesn't sound right to any of you, I implore you to go and speak with 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 24-year-olds. It is. And how you feeling? Good. Nice. This guy. But so I think that what I would ask, or kind of what I would wish for, is just to, if you have that positivity, to talk about it. If you're still optimistic about the future, share that, because there's so much of the opposite. And also, like, the easy one is just like, get off your phones, get off of streaming, stop doing it. It's all crazy. Like, our media diets are so bad. And someone mentioned, was it this talk or last talk, like silence. In the last talk, they were talking about like take time, in nature to think. Good God, it's just like, what is it? TikTok's like 4.5 hours per day per 17-year-old. That is bad.
Are you joking? I think it's a lot higher.
Yeah. But like, there aren't really 4 hours outside of school for a 17-year-old, so that's
You'd
all the
be
time.
shocked. I don't know. There must be 36 hours in their day.
Yeah, but we're all guilty of it. If you take news media, streaming, social media, and gaming and porn, the 5 media food groups, that's all of everyone's time. And it's no wonder that we have a lack of optimism. It's no wonder people aren't building the institutions of the future. So, like, get off of the devices, think carefully about what the future needs, build it, talk about it loudly, be optimistic, be positive.
Can I make a recommendation? Everybody should read Hayel's 5 book. Her daughter, who's 11, has written her 5th book now on nature and wellness and family values.
Okay, so
wrote her 5th book?
we need to hear
Hell yes.
about your daughter's book, for sure.
Oh, now? Okay.
For a minute, yeah, we'd like to hear. Yes.
So
Yeah, we're all curious
just
now.
like, not just about the book. Thanks, Mark. I love you. Thanks for the plug. But what he just said about like being on screens and tech, all the time, and how that shapes our decision making, and we're decision makers, each and every one of us, right? And so we kept our daughter off of tech, so she has no technology. And we can go on a 6-hour car ride and just talk or look out the window, and there's no iPad, there's no phone, there's nothing. She just chills and she figures it out, and she'll read a book or draw or. So I think it's because of that. I see the next generation really drowned in tech and so stressed. They're always comparing their lives to other people's lives, and those lives are fake. How many times have you met somebody in real life and you see them on screen and they look totally different? And you're like, who are you? Because I thought you looked totally different. And so imagine growing up like that with 4.5 hours or 14 hours of that all day. It's hard. And so we kept her off of tech. And then because of that, we encourage other outlets of expression. And so that's where the books come in. And they're all about self-love and positive things. Wow. But anyways. Thank you.
Wow. And can you take a moment to tell us about Keo and your vision for Keo?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So Keo, quickly, we like to say we replace your keys, credit cards, tickets, passports, government ID, all with a contactless scan of your palm. And so, You can imagine walking up to your front door and waving at it to unlock it, or walking into a cafe and paying for your coffee just by waving at the cash register. So when you're waving, you're actually waving at a device we make. It looks at 5 million points in the unique vein patterns inside of your hand in under a second, totally contactlessly. It turns out your vein patterns are unique even between identical twins and at a global scale of 8.5 billion people. So we then tied that to get verified credentials, to your college degree, to anything you want to tie to that you need to be able to prove out in the world. And we're oriented around the idea that if you take roads, plumbing, electricity, the internet, these kind of core physical infrastructure layers of the world, that we fundamentally don't have identity infrastructure for the physical world, which is the reason that when, probably at least a few people in this room went to check into their hotel, and then they got to the room, and then the key card didn't work, and they went back down to the lobby and they did it 2 or 3 times. Like, that's crazy. We're used to identity working really well in the digital world. You unlock your phone and it's just there, but then we carry around pockets and purses full of little bits of plastic and metal that act as proxies of identity, but ultimately can be lost, stolen, and forgotten. And so on one hand, we're oriented on, let's say, a more convenient world, having a better travel experience. But more importantly, we're focused on, let's call it, safety and equity, and dealing with the billion people in the world who simply don't have access to government ID, and through that don't have access to traditional finance, can't cross borders, and so on. So as we've been building this company, and we've put a huge amount of time and thought and effort and money into it, we realized that what we were building really was this infrastructure layer, and that we then, to fulfill that vision, could only do it by working with local operators at a country by country scale, and that's who ultimately was coming to us. So now we're rolling out what we're shifting from kind of a startup to what we think of as a kind of a new generation of hybrid organizations oriented around this kind of positive outlook for the future and building institutions that matter. And in this case, it is making sure that every human can prove who they are, what they own, where their citizenship is, all of these things, always, period, irrespective of a changing government regime, irrespective of a large commercial entity being a gatekeeper, but that is always yours based on effectively your unique DNA. So that's what we do. If anyone in the room does anything peripherally related to identity, so all of you, and you have any interest in talking about it more, I'd love to chat afterwards.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really interesting that he referenced amongst that, those comments, is that Kio has created an economic empowerment engine in the same way that the App Store is, in the same way that collaborative economies are. And that's something that you and I talked about earlier. And so, questions?
Yes.
So going back to the previous point that you guys were making, I just want to take your feedback, like to understand, like your point of view. How much of like social media and the way like people interact around it like has been engineered by like very well curated like machines and data like and artificial intelligence, whatever these companies are doing it on such a level that is just beyond like any like capacity for individual humans to like grasp. And how do you think that like kids or anyone for that matter can kind of avoid that? Like, is it just good parenting, or like how do you stop like that from infiltrating so deep into people's like you know
I have strong feelings about this one. I believe this is the single largest challenge that we're all facing on the planet today. And I think that it's actually because the inmates are running the asylum. And so the regulators and the government officials and the people who should, be putting in place common sense regulation where you don't have monetizing attention at scale based on amazing neuroscience is just, we have basically put hundreds of billions of dollars into architecting perfect drugs. We have given them to the regulators and to the children and everyone in between and the parents. So the parents, the regulators, and the children are all addicted to the same drugs. It's very, very hard to change a system like that. So I don't know that answer. I think, and again, if we're trying to figure out solutions to anything here, no one's going to we're going to keep going toward the cliff of climate. We're going to keep going toward all these different cliffs. We're going to keep being in wars if everyone's just kind of consuming media all the time. So we actually have to solve this. So the first step, like, it starts with you. Like, stop. Yeah, it stops with everyone in the room. Like, focus, like, build big things with good people. Spend your time on that. Get off the media. Stop doing it. And then also, if you like work together, let's all work together to figure out like what is that critical incision we can make to stop all this nonsense.
I love that because it's the thing that quote unquote connects us that separates us. So you had a question?
Yeah, maybe it's too technical, but maybe we speak later. But how do you manage to safeguard the data, the palm?
Yeah. So we're fundamentally a security and privacy company, and so we don't need to go super technical, but we don't store the raw data, first of all. So we store what's effectively an AI-generated kind of output of a scan, vector. Yeah, so we do kind of vectorization. That those vectors aren't reversible back into the original data. So even if you have it, you can't pretend to be someone you're not. So even in like a catastrophic situation of data loss, you still, nothing's happened to your underlying identity or people's ability to pretend to be you. So that's probably the most succinct answer. The thing we spend a lot more time on is actually privacy, and that is this dramatic orientation around the proliferation of facial recognition. So we spend a lot of time working with regulators and focusing on this idea that proliferating facial recognition is massively net negative for civil society, and that one of our investors is here. I was just on a panel with him, and he introduced our company as the digital or your filing cabinet that your mom has with all of her documents in it, and kind of that you digitize that, and then your hand becomes the key. And a thing I mentioned later on was the problem with facial recognition is your face becomes the key, and you wear your face on the front of your head as you walk around, on sidewalks and in train stations, and that's deeply problematic because you end up basically on this clear road to kind of police states and totalitarian, overreach, where you have perfect identity of every citizen wherever they are at all times, and we all have to make this decision between convenience and privacy. We definitely shouldn't say, well, we want convenience, out the window with privacy, right? So that's the thing that we're kind of trying to navigate. But yeah, fundamentally, a degree of anonymity is critical to a functioning civil society. And so you should have that expectation that you can turn off your phone, go outside, and you are kind of independent at that point.
When you speak about privacy, just curious, have you heard about Ramiro protocol or the Freedom Tool?
I have not.
Okay, let's speak later.
Yeah. I'd love to.
I think in my experience, I want to ask a question. So one of the biggest mistakes of my life I made was hiding friends and family.
Hiding?
Hiring.
Oh, hiring.
Hiring.
Where did you hide them?
Like, where did you put them?
Been there, done that.
Never mixed business and
I want to now sort of fix the system. And it's been 2 years. I've been trying to do that, and I can't get my head around how to get rid of it.
Oh boy.
never start to begin with.
I think that's it's just one of those things where it depends on, are they assholes, right? To Jackson's point earlier, to your point as well, toxicity, right?
Then I recommend you hide them.
Yeah. So like we all talked about this. Yeah. It's like, are they assholes or are they toxic people? Fuck off.
Discernment is going to be really big. You got to learn to discern, like, from just because they're family or friends, they don't get a seat at the table. And I know we're programmed differently. I know from when we were kids and culturally, and we're programmed that you're supposed to do this because you're supposed to be a good person, and that's what a good person is. And honestly, I feel like a good person is someone who can actually discern the difference between a toxic person and a chaotic person, and whether you want that in your life or not, family or not, friend or not, and don't be that for other people. don't create toxicity for other family members or your children or your business, your people that work for you or your employees. And so it's a two-way street, but it starts with discernment and that you don't owe anybody anything just because they're family, but that's what we are programmed to believe. And good luck with that because they are already in your business. Yeah.
I think it's one of these times where you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. And it's not easy, but you have to rip the Band-Aid and do it because ultimately it will be a detriment to the business. I had a very similar situation, and it's amazing the power of even one bad apple. It sucks the life out of everything.
And let
So
let the
choose
system
life.
do it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Nicole, but like let the system do it. Create the system where they have to go through the system, and that's it. You literally let the system do it. Unemotional. Boom. Go through the system. Then tell them to move.
I hope it's not your wife or. Okay.
Can I just add one thing? So when there are relatives that are looking to be in the company or still in the company, and we're doing searches for a CEO, CFO, whatever it is, they go through the same process that other candidates go through. They go through the same evaluations that other people do. So it's not political, it's not family. That's the system that you're talking about. The other thing is clear is kind. If you're really clear with them, that's the kindest thing you can do for them and your company. Because if they're not qualified, they shouldn't be there. They're going to ruin it for everybody, even themselves. They will ruin their thing. So there you go. A couple of things for me.
We have to have your question because you magically appeared here.
So basically,
It's healthy.
by the time you go home, your brother's going to be like, you know what? I've decided to move and I don't want to do this anymore. You're going to be like, I manifested this. Like, it's gone. I hope.
And you can do it with love and kindness.
I have been.
But you just yeah, you've got to lay it down that it's over. It's over.
Sir,
It's healing.
Thank you for the courage, sir.
You can do this.
you got this.
I will do this.
We're going to send like good.
We should all get your contact and we can create a group and be like, did you do it yet? Accountability. We're gonna wait.
Do you work for him or he works for you or your partners? He works for you?
He's gone.
Having a hard time. Easy.
Send in Mark.
What's happening is we have about 150 people working for us right now. And I see, so I live in Toronto and the back office is based out of Karachi, Pakistan. And we have a remote team in India. What happens is whenever he has a narcissist personality, right?
Can't
So
be around.
that sort of transcends all the way downwards to the entire team. And I feel like whenever I go back, it sinks me in.
Yeah, of course it does.
And people are depressed.
Yeah.
And that's affecting the growth.
You got to get rid of them. I'm sorry.
Even if it's forget about yourself, you're doing this for your employees and the health of your company. You have to. These people have families they're supporting, and he will take the ship down. It's the greater good.
For the greater good, you got to do it.
What are your thoughts around, particularly with the AI agents coming up and scaling using AI agents? What do you think? What do you expect to happen, particularly with respect to raising funds or the new funding model around that, using AI agents and scaling using AI agents?
I can take it if
Yeah.
you want.
Please.
Well, I think that I guess the esoteric answer is I think a lot of it won't matter at all. I think that the kind of hard takeoff of AI will be so extreme that we'll have to rethink kind of every aspect of business investing. And it will happen slow, and then it will happen overnight. And it, the value of labor will change entirely, economies will change entirely, and it will happen within our lifetime. I think that, like,
Any thoughts on how the change might look like? How would you interact?
are you asking for a friend?
Are you? So we actually touched on this a few different times within the softer touch conversations that we were having. One is, relates to, say, revenue per employee, right? And particularly as it relates to scaling. There's a lot of companies who just completely ignore the fact that if your revenue per employee is going down, that's a bad sign, right? And I'm scaling this company. No, you're not. You're going to drive this thing into the ground, right? So that, speaks to this other concept of focusing on efficiency versus growth, right? And so if you get technical into it, AI actually drives efficiency if it is used appropriately, right? You have to train these things. So even at Kio, they had to train a model for a very specific reason, and engineers can't exactly do what that model does, but it's trained by the engineers because it's purpose-driven, right? So those two things are vitally important. So I think as an investor, as a founder, AI is going to actually drive incredible growth from the perspective of efficiency, right? If it's used for that. So
I think we need to wrap up, but I encourage everyone to find the panelists who are amazing professionally, personally, and thank you. Thank you.